Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan Rice. On this episode, I want to go over the long-term review of my NUCANOE Unlimited and a little bit of a walkthrough and some changes I've done from the previous videos, but it's really more of a long-term review, and I want to go over some pros and cons of the NUCANOE Unlimited. Alright guys, so there is a few cons to the NUCANOE Unlimited, but they are very, very minute. But to some people that may bother you. But we're going to go through all the cons first before we get into the pros. And then we're going to do a walkthrough around the kayak setup that we use for tournament fishing and just going out having fun on the water. So let's get into the cons first and let's talk about those. So I'm going to pull you guys up here a little closer. Your first con is, I don't know if you can see in the light here, but this may just be, it is what it is because it's aluminum, but you can start seeing some deterioration, some pitting on the aluminum track itself, and a lot of that's probably due to me being on the salt water itself. I do rinse my kayaks off very well. You can see over here I'm starting to get a little bit of rust right there. I don't know if you can see inside by the screw there, but I'm getting a little bit of rust on this and some deterioration, pitting, discoloration to the aluminum on the seat itself and basically the plate of the seat. Not a horrible ordeal. You're gonna get that on most kayaks, especially being in the salt water. All I suggest doing is make sure that you really rinse your kayak off and use soap and water. The other negative to the kayak, I don't know if you can see here, we're going to zoom in. See that rubber gasket underneath this plastic plate? You can see this plastic plate is kind of like warped. It's almost looks like a mini arch to it. And I'm not over tightening these screws at all, but these plastic plates tend to not sit flat on the kayak no matter what I've done, whether I've done the screws tight or I've done the screws loose. They tend to warp and push up, and the problem is the seal underneath there is not making good contact between the plate and the kayak. So when I'm taking some waves over the bow, etc., I am getting water underneath that plate and it's going inside my kayak where I have holes drilled through it to bring some wiring through. I'm having the same issue up here on the front, but you're not really going to be able to see it, but I can run my finger underneath here and I can almost tell that this plate itself has a slight arch to it. Same thing on this side. I have nothing to it, but underneath these plates there's actually the kayak plastic itself, so there's no holes behind this plate, but I've never taken this plate off, but you can see the actual arch / bow to this plate, so they do not sit flat. So my option or my alternative to this is going to be probably eventually reach out to Ketch, reach out to Duke over at Ketch and have him give me aluminum plates that replace these plastic plates, and it will sit flat. And even if I have to get new gaskets from NUCANOE or get my own gaskets or make my own gaskets and replace these plastic plates with aluminum, that will solve this warping issue and letting water get behind it where I do have access holes, because I had to do an access hole up here to get the wiring in from my lights, for my navigation lights, and I also had to make a hole behind the plate to bring the wiring through for the switch for my navigation lights. That's another con to the kayak. I have two other cons to this kayak, and that is it. So I mounted the Boondocks landing gear on my kayak, and it actually comes with a adapter plate from NUCANOE that mounts to the lower and the upper plate. And then, as you can see, I have the upper part of this plate pushed all the way forward on this little track on the top. They need to make this track a little bit longer, I would say right to here, because I added the Boondocks landing gear. I actually had to change my black pack from a 16x16 to a 13x16, because you can see right here there's that little bit of turn back on the mold itself of the kayak, and it prevents you from getting a 16x16 black pack in here, which is not a big deal because I have the track packs now on my kayak. I have plenty of room underneath my seat for throwing tackle, but it just kind of sucked that I had to replace and spend more money on a smaller black pack just because of this plate wouldn't allow me to fit another 3 inches this way. So if they made the upper track up to here, you could push this whole set of wheels forward, still have room for your seat to swivel, and be able to still fit my 16 by 16 black pack on the kayak. Now my one other complaint about the kayak, coming from a Hobie PA, which I still own, so I have the best of both worlds, but as you see here, they have these molded in storage compartments for your Plano 3600 boxes, or I keep like my knife and stuff in there and pliers. But you can see the deck space, even though this is a 41-inch wide kayak, the deck space in between, like where your feet are, it's kind of narrow. And I have adapted to it from standing up from my chair, being it's a higher rise seat anyway, it's easy to stand up. But you have all this wasted space. I think if they cut it back to here and eliminated this, I know this is all for structural design to be able to hold these tracks, I understand that. But if they could just shift this over to about here and give yourself about another inch of actual deck space, so you have a total of 2 more inches of deck space, that would make a huge difference in having a wider stance when you stand up. So that's about it for cons, guys. Everything else I love about this kayak. The only negative things I can think about coming from the Hobie PA 14, which I still own, is those things and the actual deck space that you have in front of you, because the Hobie PA is what, 38 or 39 inches wide with that H rail. Your deck space is like almost up to here on both sides. So you have a really, really wide platform in front of you. Let's get on to the pros about the kayak. So the pros on the kayak. I love the open deck platform, even though I've added some stuff to this kayak in front of me, you know, basically like a dashboard setup. But I can still remove these items really quick with three thumb screws and be able to put a second seat on top or in front for my son to be able to go out for a tandem setup. So this is a great solo and a great tandem kayak. So that's a great pro to the NUCANOE Unlimited, having all this track on here, is that you can do whatever you want with it. You can do a solo setup, you can do a tandem setup, but I like the just open platform of this kayak instead of having a front hatch. Even though you can buy the gear pod for up front, I don't need it, and I kind of prefer having this wide open deck, because when there's times I wanted to go just down a creek or down a river, I can remove my fish finder stuff and just have a wide open deck where I can just lay my rods down. And when you don't need, you know, fish finder, it just gives you that open deck platform. It's a simple kayak. When you buy it from, you know, right out the gate, you get a seat that swivels, you get a paddle, you are good to go. There's no holes in the kayak. There's nothing. It's just a closed-in platform, except for the rear hatch. It's just a closed-in molded shell. So it's very watertight, minus those little plates that I'm talking about. But if you drill no holes in it, you actually do have a sealed kayak, except for your back hatch, which that doesn't really ever leak anyway. So it's a very great kayak to start out with, to have a blank slate, to be able to alter the way you want, or you leave it just the way it is with a seat and a paddle, and you can go down a creek, go down a river and paddle down. Yes, it's a wide kayak, but even though it's big, it paddles very well. It's not fast, but it tracks very true without having a rear rudder. And you can also add a rear rudder to this if you wanted to, very easily with the foot steering. It's a very easy maneuverable boat for the size that it is. The length of this is 12'6", I think, which is the smallest kayak I've actually ever owned, but it's the widest at 41 inches. Other pros of the kayak, I'm just trying to think as I do this video off the top of my head and I walk around, is just the sheer amount of track that you get on this. You have so much track that you can just mount so many accessories from so many companies out there. Or you just leave it blank and you can move these seats around very easily. There's another pro. The seats are attached with just thumb screws. Some people say over time they get loose. Once you have your seat set, and being I have a single and a tandem setup sometimes, I just took a little file and just did some notches so I know where they are. And with these thumb screws, once you set the seat, I just tighten them down a little bit more than just my fingers, and just take a pair of pliers and tighten them up, and the seats haven't moved. Some people say the seats get loose with these thumb screws. Now they made new thumb screws from NUCANOE, which is actually on these mounts. I'll take it off real quick for my boondocks, but they're making their own mounts now with the actual threaded insert. So they thread on a lot easier, and they're holding a little bit tighter and a little bit easier to tighten down the way they have the design on them. So they're thinking about all these things, and it's probably to replace the thumb screws on the seats themselves too as well. maybe when they're sending them right from the factory. Now their factory has moved to the what is it, Big Outdoors or Great Outdoors or wherever it is there in North Carolina, that, you know, it's there with Bonafide and everything and Native. So they're being made right there now. They're being molded right there now in North Carolina, which has been that way for about a year now. They just kind of came out with it publicly, so it's kind of cool. You know, it's still something that's made in the USA, and it overall, I'm happy with it. You know, somebody said in one of my videos that, you know, me comparing the Hobie PA14 to the NuCanoe is not comparing apples to apples. They are absolutely right. But if they watched that video, it wasn't me comparing a pedal drive to just a standard paddle kayak. I chose the NuCanoe for personal reasons, and I like it better. I love my Hobie PA14. I love jumping on that. Keeping that thing nice and clean now with no electronics on it, just a black pack and my fin drives and the paddle, and I can jump on that and just go to smaller bodies of water now and just, you know, pedal around. It's just a good kayak for me now, just to jump in with no bulky stuff in my way. I jump on it. It's a comfortable kayak. It's a wide platform, and I go, you know, go away with it. But it's not comparing apples to apples, but I picked the NuCanoe because I like it for personal reasons. I still think it's a better kayak for me personally. All your reviews on YouTube's are opinions of other people. Somebody may hate this and love the Hobie and say, well, how could you go to a NuCanoe? It's all personal preference and taste of how you like things. There's very little cons to this kayak. I haven't had any problems with it yet at 9 months, except for a little bit of the rust and stuff and some deterioration on the finish because I do a lot of salt water too. Maybe it's me not cleaning it good enough and protecting it. But does it take away from the function? Absolutely not. That's the only cons besides the plates and the deterioration that I've had on this in 9 months. It's going to last me for a very, very long time. I'm going to beat it up till I basically put a hole in it and it's no longer able to float. Let's get into a walk around of my setup, but the pros outweigh all the cons. It's a great kayak for the price. The price point I think is great, but once you start getting into more of an elaborate setup, which is still not that elaborate compared to a lot of other people's, it can get pricey, but it's still, this whole setup is basically the same cost as almost your base cost of a Hobie PA14. So it's all depending on what you want to do. You know, NuCanoe makes pedal drives for this with just a propeller in the back with a pedal drive. You can add a rudder to it. You can add a lot of things to this kayak very easily with all this track, just like this Boondocks attachment, just like my foot control steering from NuCanoe. It was a kit. It goes on with thumb screws. That's all positives. Let's get into the walk around, show you some changes I've done since I've done my last initial setup of the NuCanoe. So we're going to start out the front here. You can see I have the Yak Power navigational lights. I have a video install on all these things on my kayak. Up here, I just took a Yak Attack Panfish Pro, I think, or whatever, the little camera mount, and I added the roto grip to it to hold my net within like perfect reach of me when I'm sitting at my seat. I have a strap across here on my dry bag. This is where I keep a bunch of things that I need, like, you know, bug spray, sunblock, extra torpedo prop, wrench, straps, first aid kit, etc. I have the AR tube, I think this is called, from Yak Attack. Don't hold me to this. I've done a walkthrough so many times I start to forget what half the parts I have on my kayak. But this is just on the lock and load base. So is the mount over there. I can move it up to here. I can do whatever I want. Like I said, with these tracks, you can add this stuff anywhere. You can see here I did a little homemade crossbar for my cell block and like almost like a dashboard setup for me. I'm trying this out. It was very inexpensive for me to do. I actually have a quick little video walkthrough of this. This whole setup cost me $3 because I had some stainless steel strut from the job site. I already had the cell block mount from Yak Attack, and you can see I kept my transducer here. All these things come off with 3 thumb screws, and I can remove this whole setup, and I can just twist this up out of the way. And when I'm going down the road, sometimes I just take a little Night Eyes tie and just tie that off too if it's on a long trip, to keep it from vibrating around as I'm traveling down the road. So that's that setup for my fish finder with my homemade crossbar. I have a set of track packs over here. I usually keep them in that area, but I could always move it around. I have foot control steering for my Torquedo. I use the mount from NuCanoe itself. I did a homemade mount for my anchor mount for my anchor wizard. This way it kept it straight coming off the back here, because before when I was sitting on the track up here, obviously the anchor was right here and I used a grappling style anchor, so it was in the way of my motor turning. So I made this mount out of some 1/2-inch plastic. I kind of rounded it off, did a nice angle cut to it. I actually have an install video and how I did that as well. Obviously I have my Torqeedo back here with the NUCANOE mount, and it's set up with a pulley system that I have it, and the NUCANOE comes with an actual pulley mount on their kayak already for a motor setup. You just got to pull it up and you put it down. It's kind of hard to do from here, especially one-handed, but you get the concept. Sometimes I keep a cooler back here, sometimes I don't, or I put some extra tackle bag back here. I have my Visipole with the American flag on it. I got my camera pole from Yak Attack. I have a USB charging port there. I have two 3.0 charging ports, and it tells you your voltage, as you can see. That does my camera, and it does my charge my cell phone when I need it. That's inside of, hold on, I'm trying to do this one-handed. That's inside my black pack. I just drilled a hole through it, and I have a Aqua battery running that, and this is where I keep my thermos, my cooler, not my cooler, my thermos, some food, extra tackle, clothing, whatever I need, I keep inside this more or less than tackle. Because I keep, believe it or not, I keep a lot in the track pack. I have the actual like inserts in here. So that's my soft plastics, but I also got the tray inserts on this as well. So you can see it gives you 2 rows of tackle. Now, when I'm in a tournament, obviously I carry more tackle, but when I'm going here locally on my own water, I know what baits are going to work at the time when I'm fishing, so I don't need to keep a lot. So basically my tackle's in the track packs now. I just keep my terminal box back here, etc. I got the Boondocks landing gear, obviously, and then I use the roto grips to hold my catch board behind the seat. The only thing it does is it kind of interferes with the latch on the black pack, but it's not a big deal when I need it. You know, usually when I'm on the water, I usually just leave this down, and all I gotta do is flip it up so it's not in the way, and I just gotta come back here and flip this up. But if I'm in rough water, I will close this latch and make sure my fishing poles are tethered off on the tubes. That's the only downside. I like it behind the seat. I don't know if I'm actually gonna move it to up here or anything underneath just to lay it. If I'm catching a lot of fish, I may just leave it underneath the seat at the time, because I do have it tethered off. So if it does get annoying and I don't want to reach behind me, I could literally just do this and leave it underneath my seat. Not a big deal. This is where I keep my battery for my Torqeedo. A little tongue-tied there. But you can see the mount I have here from NUCANOE for my Boondocks landing gear. Like I said, I got the foot control steering. It easily turns my Torqeedo motor, having just 1 foot instead of like your 2-foot setup. So that works really well. But overall, this is the full setup, full walk around. Talked about the pros and the cons. I got the Anchor Wizard on here mounted on top of the Groovy landing gear from Boondocks. That's why I wanted this, because I have other ways to mount this, because before I kind of basically just had this mounted on the track, but I still needed to be able to have my Anchor Wizard. I like them behind me. Only time I change this, if I'm in a river, I will put the anchor to the front of me, and there is a piece from NUCANOE that actually takes these 3 screw holes, and you can mount the Anchor Wizard on the front. I actually have that piece. I haven't used it yet. Change this around. I'll just kind of temporarily run some eyelets up here just to hold that line when I'm on the river, and use that front mount from NUCANOE. This is my setup, guys. This is what I use. This is my Torqeedo throttle, just on the lock and load base. But I'm going to walk around this one more time slowly for you. Obviously, I got my paddle holder that's built right into this. I have it tethered off. This video is more about the pros and the cons, but I also wanted to show you guys my complete setup and some small changes if you've been following the channel by adding the Boondocks instead of using the Yak Attack cart. There's a reason before that, because I'm getting old and it makes it a lot easier. And mounting and having this homemade crossbar that I did up here right now, that's the 2 newest things to the kayak. You know, just drop a comment. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I have a video on everything, minus, you know, these quick little Yak Attack accessories, but I have a video on everything I've done on this kayak, including the wheels, including the Yak Attack, not Yak Attack, the Yak Power navigation lights, the Boondocks wheels, the Torqeedo install, the Anchor Wizard install that I did with the homemade plate. I have all videos on everything I've set up on this kayak. It's starting to get a little bit more confined, a little bit more cluttered, but it's still a very clean setup, in my opinion, over other kayaks I've seen on the water where people really jam a lot in here. I still feel comfortable having the way this is set up on the water. I've been in some very, and that's another pro too, I've been in some very high, wavy, saltwater conditions with a lot of boat traffic, and the wind picked up and I had some 3 to 4 foot rollers and I had no problem being on this kayak. And I had the kayak cushion as well. This seat's actually very comfortable with the swivel seat, which I didn't really cover too much. Adding the kayak cushion just makes it a lot more comfortable. And that's the last accessory pretty much on my kayak. So overall, like I said, it's getting a little bit more cluttered, but it's still very clean. I like the setup. I like how I did the little homemade dashboard. It kind of gives me like a little cockpit here that I feel like I'm, in control. That's it, guys. Drop me some comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Tell me what you think of this setup. Let me know if you like my little homemade Unistrut dashboard crossbar about there that I can still remove very easily with 3 thumb screws when I don't need it. I'm really loving it, guys. I think if you guys purchase a new canoe as well, I think you guys would enjoy it, and you could have some real fun really modifying this kayak to your liking, to your taste, to your way you want to keep it set up, or just keep it wide open with a paddle and some rods on the deck and just go have some fun. As always, guys, I appreciate every one of you. Be safe on the water, and I'll catch you on the water. Thanks for watching. See you soon.